Okay, I think we've got 6. Rob, do you think that since we can blame some of this on the pandemic and we should backdate these reports to December 30th?
I won't make that call.
No. I think we've got all members of the board in the meeting. And we also have Chris Wenders, you in some remote undisclosed location, Chris?
Yes, as I finished my breakfast, sorry. We had one of our children has tested positive, so I'm at home for the week now. Good times.
Oh my. Well, I hope the symptoms are manageable.
Just a cough and a headache at this point. He seems to be doing fine. He's playing video games, so he's probably in some way happy about this.
So the first item on our agenda is to take action on, I think, 5 sets of minutes, which I have as November 15, 16, 22, 23, and 29. But I'm now wondering, those are the ones that I did some further edits on and got some comments on from some of you. But I'm also wondering if we had a lab. No, that was November 29. We did not have a meeting in the month of December. Is that right or wrong?
God, it's all a blur.
It is.
I think we had a meeting December 22nd.
Okay.
We definitely had a meeting December
Yes.
22nd.
Yep, I think you're right,
The
Mary.
minutes.
Okay, well, I didn't, that probably happened after or about the time I sent those November edits around. Eric, could you possibly put on the screen the draft minutes from December 22nd?
Yes, let me figure out the easiest way to do that. It's gonna take me a second.
Well, while Eric is doing that, were there, I haven't seen any suggestions from the minutes since, I think Tom Koch, you gave me a few that I incorporated into those minutes that you commented on, and otherwise those stand as edited. for your, I guess, comment and action. And so I guess either more discussion of any of those is in order or a motion is in order.
Despite the fact that I did not attend all of them, I will move that we approve all 5 of those minutes en bloc.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the draft minutes of the 15th, 16th, 22nd, 23rd, and 29th of November. And it's been seconded. Any discussion?
Just as a point of order, I'm wondering how we would do that, how we'd vote on them if we weren't at a meeting on block. Noted for the record.
I don't
Robert's
think
rule says you do not have to be present at the meeting
you
in
can,
order to
if you
vote on
want,
those minutes.
yeah, Tom is right. You can abstain from voting on minutes at a meeting that you weren't in attendance at, but you are not required to. But if you prefer, we can take them one at a time and break.
Well, I just note, I think I just note for the record that any meeting that I wasn't at, I'd abstain from. I don't need to take them one at a time.
Okay. And which meetings were those, if you recall?
I have no idea.
Well,
I might have gone to all of those actually, or missed one. Hold on a second, I can figure this out.
We will make sure, Eric and I will make sure that the minutes for this meeting reflect that accurately.
well, all of the minutes should reflect who is at each meeting, so it shouldn't really be a big question.
Right, that's why it shouldn't be hard to verify.
Okay.
Oh, and sorry, I missed who seconded the motion.
Jeremy.
That was
Bob.
me.
Jeremy Hansen.
Oh, Jeremy.
So without further ado, all in favor of approving the motion, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Opposed? And the minutes of this meeting will reflect abstentions from Ed Adrian of any of the minutes for any of the meetings he was not in attendance at. I see Mia has joined us. Good morning, Mia. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Is there any public, Eric, is there anyone from the public in the meeting who might wish to speak?
I do not see anyone in the participant list.
Okay.
And I do have, thank you, Mia had popped in. I have the December 22nd meeting minutes as you most recently circulated with some minor edits. Whenever you want to see those.
Let's see them now. So there's, why don't you, okay, that's good. You can, that's the proposed schedule for completing the work. Why don't you scroll down to the next page? Public comment. Okay. And Eric, those were previously circulated as edited.
I believe I pulled this, so they are up on the website. Thank you, Mia, for pointing that out. And then Yes, this was, I just grabbed these from an email you had sent December 31st.
Was that an email that went to the full board?
Yes, from you, sorry.
Okay.
And you had.
Okay. And who,
Yes,
was there-
yeah, put up on the website.
could you scroll back up to the top of this so we see who was present? So all members were present.
It looks like Ed was not present for that one.
Says he's there.
Well, he's listed as members present remotely.
Yeah, I know I was there because it's my birthday and I was pissed off.
Thanks for sharing.
Sounds like we have an update to the meeting minutes then.
All right. Well, that'll be in the recording, Jeremy. We can. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented, as edited for December 25th?
So move.
I'll second.
Very seconded by Rob. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed, say no, or raise your hand. Okay, the ayes have it. There's no public, thank you, Eric. You can take that down. Still seeing no one from the public. I think that takes us to the reports. The one open item, well, one of the few open items is on the Senate main report. As I circulated a couple of times over the weekend, there are 2 or 3 topic captions for sections that have been used in these reports previously that don't have content in them, except content that is from the last 10 years ago. And so in my notes, when I sent those around, I noted that, and it suggested that there, and in this draft, there's some green highlighted language that, from me, that is the only new text. There's also an edit from Tom Koch in a title of a section it's on page 10 of the latest draft. But there's the adherence to county boundaries and other existing political subdivisions, patterns of geography, social interaction, trade, political ties, and common interests. And the conclusion, which don't really align with this draft from right now. So I don't know what to do about that. One of the options would be to strike them and which would mean also striking the conclusion paragraph. I know we would really like to get these done and out the door today, so I guess I'd open that up for comment and discussion to see if anyone has preference.
In terms of community of interest, I could add a sentence or two that would argue that smaller clusters of portions of the county might very well have a closer community of interest than the varying interests of the county as a whole.
I mean, whatever the, Tom, whatever the majority wants to do in there, but we need to do it. And that's still undone. And then, so I mean, we could, one of the ideas I've been pondering is whether, considering that all of these reports may see some additional proofreading from the edits, from that type of edit from Secretary of State's office when they go through these one more time and get them ready to be posted and published. We could say that one member of the majority, one member of the minority will be by consensus agreed to be the person who can sign off on that type of editing. But what you're, I just want to bring this, home, and ideally today. And is anyone else, there's that other section, Tom, on what is it? County boundaries. I mean, do you want to just, this is really the call for you, Tom, Jeremy, Ed, and Rob. Do you want to try to add some text to that now, i.e. maybe this morning? Or do you want to just dispense with those or proceed in some other way?
Well, I don't think it would take us too long to write a couple of paragraphs to comment on those. It would not be lengthy in either case.
Tom, if you could handle that, that would be wonderful. I think it would be good if we could include those. I've just got to get back to my day job a little bit, and I don't really have time to do it at this point.
Yeah.
I could do it. I could either get off the meeting now and try to get something done and send it along, or I could do it as soon as the meeting is over and circulate it.
We could, we have a few more things to talk about, but we could, once we have talked about them, we could recess this meeting until 11:30. I mean, it's scheduled to go for 2 hours. We could recess to 11:30, Tom, and between now and then you could draft something, and if you want to circulate a draft before we reconvene, I'm just sort of thinking out loud.
Alternatively, we could just vote to empower Tom to do that and just essentially approve that in advance.
Mhm.
That's dangerous.
Oh, because you're not trustworthy, Tom. We all know that.
That was an evil laugh.
Yeah, that's true. That was an evil laugh. I think I'm going to retract my suggestion.
Well, it's up to you, Tom. If you think you can get something done in an hour, and I'd be happy to work with you on that, just in terms of pure, proofing and editorial content or form. We could get it back by 11:30-ish and reconvene. Does that sound sensible?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's go on to Rob posted this morning a draft response to the minority report. My own sense is that that's the call of the majority, and that could be included in the report as either part of the conclusion or as a separate topic heading entitled "A Response to Minority Report." And Rob, was that something that would be going in both reports?
I don't mind if it goes in both reports or just in one place.
Okay. Do you think it was written more with one in mind, or the House in mind?
Yes, it was written specifically in response to the
So what we
House.
could do is we could cross-reference it in the Senate report and put a link into it when it's published. And that would take care of that. And all I would suggest is that the minority could then add a very brief statement acknowledging the majority's response and standing on the substance of the minority's report, just a couple of sentences, and that would take care of that. I think I can save the rest of this for when we reconvene. I have thank yous, staying in touch, and a reminder that we are all appointed to a term of office that expires on June 30th, 2030. So we're in this, in case the US Census releases another census in 4 years, we could be doing this again. Eric or Chris, how would we go about recessing this for until 11:30? Is that, do you need to send a new meeting notice and connection out, or can we just log back in? If we leave this meeting open, can we just log back in?
Eric, can you leave it open on your end for that long? Will that work?
I believe I can.
And just kind of monitor it in case anyone shows up?
One question I'd have is if you'd want, and I'm guessing not, to pause the recording until the board reconvened,
Yeah, that makes sense.
but
And
require an adjournment.
Well, hold on. I don't think meeting recordings are even required under state law anymore.
no.
So, I mean, I think, us recording it is is above and beyond. So I think if we pause it until we come back, I don't think we're breaking any rules.
And let's just note on the record when we do come back that there was no further.
Yeah, and the
meeting.
minutes can show that. Okay. Okay, well, let's recess until 11:30. Tom, Dutch, please feel free to reach out to me. In the meantime, I'll keep an eye out.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you in a bit.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Waiting for Ed and Tom. Tom Koch sent me something to take a quick look at about 15 minutes ago. And I sent him some punctuation suggestions only. And he's probably incorporating those and getting ready to send that back. But it's two pieces for the adherence to county boundaries, number 1, and 2, patterns of geography, social interaction, trade, etc. It does not propose content for the conclusion, but in looking at the text that's in the draft as a carryover from 10 years ago. I don't think it would be hard to change that by adding or inserting that in maybe one or two places that that are consistent with the earlier parts of the report, that consistent with the framework that the majority of the board adopted for doing this work, and i.e. the single member model, that they took into account the population realities, we're consistent with that, and the non-numerical factors. But Tom hasn't done that yet, and I don't want to speak for him. The other option, as we talked about earlier this morning, would be to just not we can put in, this concludes the report, or something like that, but or we could perhaps delegate that to Tom, and maybe with me as an editor. When he gets back on. While we're waiting for Tom, I'll ask this. One of the things that I was emailing with Mary, I came up with, I had to come up with one place in Vermont based upon this work that I've never visited, that I decided I want to visit. It would be Brookline. And I don't know if anyone else came to a similar conclusion about now that I've done all this work about towns and state geography, there's one place I've never been to that I like to go to. It was between that, Brookline, and Baltimore. Anyone else have a?
I think I'm going to make a trip to Ferdinand at some point.
I was going to say the same thing, Chris. I want to meet with all 16 people in that town.
we might, if we all went, we'd have almost a quorum at a town meeting.
Actually, it reminds me, I was driving down Route 7, maybe it was around Thanksgiving, and I was trying to remember to look for where the likely residences were in Glastonbury, because my recollection was they wouldn't be that far from the road. Yeah. Northeast Kingdom is the one area of the state I feel like I now know a lot more about, at least on paper, than I have before, but I still like to visit because it does seem like there's a lot of beautiful places in the Northeast Kingdom that I have not yet visited.
And not too many people.
Nope.
Let me do this. Let me keep us moving. Let me email to Eric what I sent to Tom Koch. And perhaps he can put it up for you to start reading. So that's on its way to you, Eric.
Okay.
And
Rob, I
Tom,
wondered, go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry, while we have a moment here, I just wanted to thank everyone for all of their work. And I know the incredible number of hours you've put into this. And also remind you that you are entitled to a $50 per day per diem. I know that's redundant. And only 2 of you have submitted for that. So if any of you are interested in doing that and aren't just doing this out of the goodness of your hearts and want a little bit of compensation for the much less compensation than the time than the worth of the time that you put into it. We have expense forms for that. If you need any assistance with that, let us know and I can point you in the right direction. But just a reminder that you can submit for $50 for every meeting that you attended. There's also mileage reimbursement for those of you who attended in person. And there's an hourly meager wage that we can talk about as well for time spent outside of meetings.
During the break, Chris and I were on the phone and he explained that his intended process from here on out is to take these documents and proofread them and then put them, maybe clean them up and without any changes to text, format them and get them ready in digital form to be posted officially with a date on it and so forth. And that I think, Chris, you said is likely to take a couple of days, maybe 2.5 days-ish. You're going to do it as soon as you can. We know that people are eager to see this. So that's just to keep that in mind. The acknowledgements and thank yous in the reports sort of speak for themselves, but there's a reason we put those right up front is to thank the people without whom the board could not have been able to do this over this protracted period of time. And I know that some of us may be being asked or will be asked to go in and testify in legislative committees. Just speaking for each of us, and it's my understanding that the House process is going to move fairly rapidly to get a House proposal back out to the boards of civil authority relatively quickly. I'm not sure how long that's going to take, but and on the Senate side, I haven't heard exactly how that process is going to work historically. For the last 3 reapportionments, the Senate has appointed a special committee that includes the members of the Senate Government Operations Committee and more. So they have to go through that process of appointing a special committee. Eric, did you receive that?
I did.
Mr. Koch, I emailed, while we were talking, I emailed to Eric what I had emailed to you with a few, small edits. So he has that and he can put it up on the screen. Did you make any further changes than that?
No, I did not.
So Eric, why don't you put that on the screen?
And that's the one that has adherence to county boundaries and other existing political
Yes,
subdivisions.
it's what I.
How does that look?
That's it. give people a chance to read that page.
Just let me know when y'all are ready for me to scroll.
Okay, Eric, why don't you roll it to the next page? Okay, why don't you go to the rest of it, Eric? Anyone have any questions or anything for Tom Koch on this? I would say that's really addressed to Rob, Jeremy, and Ed.
This looks good to me.
Going once?
Hang on just one sec. Okay.
Any comments, Ed?
No,
Okay. So you can take that down, Eric. Before you got in the meeting, Tom, I mentioned that there isn't a replacement text for the conclusion section.
Didn't look at that.
And I suggested the possibility of you and maybe with me as editor, taking the existing text from 10 years ago and modifying it to reflect the fact that what we're talking about in the conclusion is the single member district map, and puts it in that context. Because I think that that would be, otherwise it just doesn't seem to fit as a conclusion to what goes before it.
Okay, I'm trying to locate the conclusion.
Well, let's do this. I will, let me read it. It's brief. It says, the board read the prior Senate apportionment proposals and state and local maps, studied the geography and topography of each part of the state, and considered a remarkable variety of Senate proposals generated by board members and others. The board members drew upon personal experiences in local government throughout the state, and in some cases prior experiences in the apportionment process. The board made a concerted effort to draw a map that takes into proper account the population realities of our state, attention to county boundaries where feasible, and the non-numerical apportionment factors. chosen by the General Assembly. The board is confident that there is more than one way to draw a good constitutional and sensible Senate map, but believes its proposal presents the people of the state with a sound option. And I don't think that flows from what goes before it anymore, but it would be possible to edit it so that it does flow from what goes before it, but it would be a different statement of conclusion.
Well, I think it would be very easy simply to edit half of one sentence in there where it mentions the county adherence to county boundaries, and then simply say refer to the other factors, and then say as well as county boundaries.
So
And I think
how do you, so I don't think that's going to take much work. I'm not sure we want to do it on the fly right now, but how do you feel about you taking a swing at that later today and running it by
Sure.
me? Then you can report back and then we're done. I mean, I think there's a sense of the willingness to designate you to do that.
be happy to.
Okay. Then Tom, before you got back in the meeting, I reiterated our thank yous to the people who helped us out as reflected in the acknowledgements at the beginning of the report. The legislature is going to be jumping in on this, the House in particular, apparently starting this week. And it will be trying to get something out to the boards of civil authority within the next 2 weeks. The Secretary of State's office is going to polish up these reports, insert hot links, put into the appendices what need to go there, and do a thorough proofing. And then that'll take 2 or 3 days. They'll be in touch if that generates or discovers anything problematic that isn't foreseen. We had a brief conversation, Tom, about what towns, based upon this experience, what town you've never been to in Vermont that you might like to go to, and I suggested Brookline or Baltimore, and the consensus seemed to be Ferdinand. So maybe you could lead a road trip to Ferdinand.
Next summer. After the black flies go, so late July into August. Happy to do it.
So we will be generating a set of minutes from this meeting that will need to be reviewed and approved, and we can't approve them without a meeting. So I expect that we may convene a approval of minutes meeting that will conclude our work for the time being. But as I said, in your absence, I guess earlier before we broke, these apportionment board appointments are 10-year appointments, which is an anomaly in state government, probably fitting to the task. So we are part of the same group for 10 years, just in case we have to get back together again. And is there anything else anyone would like to add?
Yeah, just one thing, Tom. Since the majority rebuttal to the minority report, we're a quorum. We couldn't debate this amongst ourselves without having a formal meeting. So I just want to make sure that the other 3 members of the majority are cool with the language that was put forward in that before we vote to just rubber stamp it.
That's
For
fine.
me.
So I will take that, Rob, as a motion and a vote by the majority to approve the final versions of the Senate and House so-called majority reports. And the minutes will reflect that.
The only one comment that I would have is that I think it's the first sentence. The singular of criteria is criterion.
Well, the editors at the Secretary of State's office will run with that, Tom.
I'm sorry, what is the motion on the floor, Tom Little?
Well, Rob pointed out that the members of the majority, being a majority of the board, can't, in a sense, have their own colloquy and debate on the majority reports as a group of four without noticing a meeting, because they're also a majority of the apportionment board. So Rob was asking, since there hadn't been an opportunity of those four members to discuss separately the text of what Rob posted this morning as the rebuttal, is everybody are those four members okay with the text of the rebuttal?
Got it.
And I said I would,
I'd move to table that until our next meeting.
Who was that?
That's Ed.
I'll second so we can discuss it. Do we have a next meeting?
Well, we evidently have a meeting where we have to approve the minutes.
right, that I was imagining that would be sometime in the next few weeks.
Yeah, a lot of this seems ad hoc. For example, having a minority report to begin with. So I'm comfortable with taking some time to go over the rebuttal and submitting that to the legislature at the pleasure of the majority.
But are you suggesting you don't want it to be part of the main report?
Well, it's part of the record because it's part of the minutes. It's a public record, so if anybody wants to see it, they can see it and it can be shared. And I think Rob did a great job on it. I only obviously had a chance to review it this morning, and I'd like a chance to discuss it and reflect on it. Yeah, so yes, Tom, the answer is it doesn't need to be included because we're making this up as we go.
Haven't we been making all of this up as we go?
Yes.
Well, there's a motion on the floor. As I understand it, the motion is to not include the majority members' rebuttal to the minority report, and to finalize and release the board's reports without it.
Basically, yeah.
And then the majority members would, at a later date, perhaps at the meeting when we meet to vote on the minutes of this meeting, to discuss that.
Well, I think we can discuss it as long as we don't have a quorum before then, right?
Correct.
So I think we'll refine it. My proposal is that it be refined, and then, I don't want to inconvenience anybody. So if the majority is in concurrence, well, never mind. Yes, at the meeting where we approve the minutes at, it would be on the agenda.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Gene.
So I'm just trying to clarify, because I was thinking of this meeting as our final sort of substantive meeting where we are, or at least coming to some closure on the products that we are, on the reports that are going to be released. So I just want to understand what the intention is to have what the intention would be for the follow-up meeting and what type of substantive work would be expected for that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, is that as far as I'm aware, there's no process for minority report. So if we voted on the minority report, it would be denied. So, as a majority, assuming that the four of us vote in unison, we need to be able to have a chance to respond to it. Now, if people don't want to attend that meeting because they're not part of the majority, then obviously that would be their individual decisions.
Yeah, historically, there's at least, I know of 2 apportionment board reports that had minority reports. So this is not setting a precedent.
Yeah, but Tom, how do you make something official without a vote?
Well, I think the members of the minority have agreed on something. We're not a committee or a subcommittee or anything like that. If you want, I think there was unanimous consent of the 3 minority members to the content of the minority report.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
It means that the 3 members stand behind it and wrote it together.
Yeah, but from a structural perspective, you can't approve a minority report without the body approving it.
That's not true. I don't think that's true.
I think you're thinking about it from a court perspective, Tom. This is a public body. You're thinking about it like if the US or Vermont Supreme Court has a majority and minority opinion, they don't vote it the same way that a public body votes.
What we can do is approve a motion to permit the inclusion of the minority report in the board's report.
Why would we do that if we disagree with portions of it?
To allow for free discussion.
Right, but then so this is in response to Jeannie's ultimate question. This is the sort of slope that we go down as far as needing to then rebut it. Right?
Right.
Chris, is there precedent for this within other public bodies at the Secretary of State's office?
I'm trying to remember, and I can't off the top of my head, Ed, but I do think that maybe it's the wrong context, but in an administrative hearing setting, I think that boards have issued dissenting opinions around professional regulation decisions.
Yeah, that's quasi judicial though.
Yeah, so that may not apply here. But I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, in the legislature, minority reports are by tradition and by the rule of the majority frowned upon, but they are not prohibited. And they do occur.
Tom, I don't know if you can see, but Jeremy, Jeannie, and Mary all have their hands raised.
Sorry.
Okay, and I would just add, while I've read the the two minority reports that I referred to, I did not go into the minutes from 1973, 1992 to look at whether the apportionment board took any action to consent to the inclusion of the minority report. Jeremy, and then Jean, and then Mary.
So because I'm the kind of person that has a copy of Robert's Rules 11th edition here at hand, I can read the section of this, which is on page 527. I don't know that I want to read the entire thing. I certainly can. It's only about a page long. It says, as indicated above, the part that I skipped, the formal presentation of a, quote, minority report, end quote, is a privilege that the Assembly may accord, not a matter of right, since the appointment of the committee implies that the Assembly is primarily interested in the findings of the majority of the committee's members. But in debate on any written or oral report in the Assembly, any member of the reporting committee who does not concur has the same right as any other member of the Assembly to speak individually in opposition. And just, this is me then saying, as we're voting, as part of the process, you get to weigh in on it. So back to the Robert's Rules. No one can make allusion in the Assembly to what has occurred during the deliberations of the committee, however, unless it is by report of the committee or by unanimous consent. A, quote, minority report, end quote, in writing may begin, the undersigned, a minority of the committee appointed to whatever, not agreeing with the majority, desire to express their views in the case, so on and so on. Skipping down a bit. When a minority of the committee wishes to make a formal presentation of its views, it is customary, unless the Assembly refuses permission, to receive its report immediately after the report of the committee. In such a case, the member presenting the committee report can properly notify the Assembly that the minority wishes to submit its views in a separate report. And I mean, I'm not going to go into the rest of it, but it's sort of a nod to the minority and can be approved by the majority. Doesn't have to be though. So Ed, if you if you prefer, we can elect not to include the minority report and ask them, to send it separately as a non-endorsed addendum to the legislature. That's presumably also feasible.
Jean,
Actually, Mary was ahead of me.
okay, Mary.
It seems to me that regardless of what we do, we can adopt Tom Koch's proposal approving the submission of the minority report, which is pretty clearly labeled as a minority report, or the majority can refuse to accept it. And I think the legislature will still ask to see it. They know perfectly well that there is one. So I kind of don't see the point of this entire discussion, to be honest.
Jean.
Well, I was going to add that because there was a question about situations in which there are minority reports in some official capacity, and I recalled locally here there was an Act 46 study committee in terms of merging in the school district merger for Addison for the Mount Abe district, and that's an official committee, and they included a minority report in that as part of the majority report. So that's one example where I know of recent inclusion of a minority report. But I did also want to mention that I think we may have strayed from the original motion, which was to table something. So I'm wondering if we've even wandered off of the motion that we actually had.
Yeah. Good point. I think the pending motion is a motion to, I guess, maybe based upon this discussion, Ed, could you remind us what the motion is?
So the motion was to table the rebuttal to the minority report, which I believe prompted Jeannie's question about the meeting schedule, which prompted my response about whether the minority report was rightly adopted. But the motion on the table is, the motion is to table the rebuttal.
Okay.
Like Tom Koch has his hand up.
Hey, Tom Koch, sorry, I was looking at a different screen.
It's okay, thank you. Well, in this day and age, when free speech is all too often repressed, I'm in favor of affording the greatest amount of latitude for expressing a variety of opinions. I think it's perfectly appropriate to permit the inclusion of the minority report. I think it's appropriate to include a rebuttal to that. I do not object to postponing this to discuss the wording of it, so long as we can attach it at a later date. I'm not sure whether that's possible or not. When is this going to get?
Well, right, the plan was to turn this over to the Secretary of State's office today for final proofreading and cleanup, and preparing it for public distribution and posting later this week.
Well, how about this next meeting being held very soon, like later this afternoon or perhaps tomorrow morning, and give us an opportunity to agree on the wording of the rebuttal. Ed, does that work for you?
I could see getting it done by the end of the week, Tom. I don't have the capacity to give it the thought that I want to give it before then.
Well,
I mean, when did you say this is going to the legislature special master?
well, the report, our report was due at the end of November. We delivered the maps at the end of November and said that we would follow up with the written reports within a couple of weeks.
Okay. And the legislature is not going into session until,
Tomorrow.
yeah, but they're, so
Well, let me ask you this. Is there any reason, Ed, you can't spend an hour or so reading Rob's work over tonight and meet on it for an hour tomorrow?
you mean with Rob or with the
Well, you could work with the groups of 3 or 2. We could have more discussion at a renoticed apportionment board meeting. We could have that tomorrow. We could have it Wednesday. I just would love to have the Secretary of State's office be able to start the process of preparing this for publication today, subject to dropping in the rebuttal piece.
Okay. I can meet on Wednesday afternoon.
Could I make a suggestion that we support the majority report so the Secretary of State's office can get going on it, and then table the minority report and the rebuttal to be approved at the next meeting concurrently? Does that make sense?
Friendly amendment.
Sounds good to me.
So that's whether a majority of the board will consent to including a minority report.
I think we will consent to including a minority report, I think. The question is, do we want to hold up the entire process until we can get the rebuttal squared away, or do we want to approve the majority report now so the Secretary of State's office can get going and getting it to the legislature, and then approve the minority report and the rebuttal separately at the next meeting? And then that can be passed along as soon as that's done.
This
Not
strikes
a
me,
motion, it's just a
excuse
suggestion.
me, this strikes me as completely different than what the motion is on the table.
It is. It's a suggestion, not a motion to amend or anything. It's just a suggestion.
I'll withdraw my motion then.
So then, Rob, are you making a motion?
Okay, I will make a motion that the board adopt the majority report to be sent to the Secretary of State's office, and that we convene on Wednesday to vote on the minority report and the rebuttal.
Second.
And Rob, could I take that motion to mean both the House and the Senate?
Yes.
Okay. So, if I get this, I'm trying to understand what a no vote to this motion means. Because I know that the members of the minority may not feel comfortable with an affirmative vote for the substance of the main reports because they voted against, the maps for those that go with those reports. So I think, without being argumentative, I suspect that the minority members may vote no on this motion, and it will carry by a 4-3 vote. That would certainly carry the motion. Can people meet at 3 o'clock on Wednesday?
Earlier in the day for me would be better, but I can try to make that work.
Okay.
I'm not available on Wednesday at 3 o'clock.
After what?
I'm not available at 3 o'clock on Wednesday.
How about 9?
Would work.
Nine a.m. Wednesday, January 5.
That works for me.
Works for me.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I prefer not to have another meeting to begin with, frankly. I feel like
Well-
the whole thing is going to be hijacked again. There's no guarantee to me. So, but if that's the will of this group,
Well-
then I will be there at 9 o'clock.
If I may, I can guarantee the minority the 4th vote for including the minority report. Not that I endorse it,
Well,
but properly phrased
a-
motion to include it.
yeah, it's also a public record by now, and it's, it's out, it's going to be out there. So any more discussion on Rob's motion?
Yes. I think maybe a revision of the motion and splitting it into two would be helpful. And that would be a motion to approve the minority report, which would obviously be 4-3. And then a motion to permit the Secretary of State to get working on it, and to hold up distribution until after we can have Wednesday's meeting. And that could
I
be
think
unanimously supported.
if the, if I treat that as a motion to divide the question,
Fine.
then I think the question is divisible. And the first part would be to delay action on the rebuttal to the minority report. That's the first part. And the second part would be to agree to the inclusion of the minority report. I don't think it matters which is first and which is second. And I think it's implicit there, Tom, that this, Rob, your motion does not, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think your motion is one that also approves the content of the two majority reports. Was that in there?
You mean the minority reports?
No, the majority reports.
No, we approved the two majority reports. So they go on to the Secretary of State's office, so it
So
can be
that's-
worked on and sent to the
So
legislature.
that's part of your motion?
Forthwith, yes. And then the second part of the motion is that we table discussion of the minority reports and the rebuttal, which we will then vote on at the next meeting, on which I guess we've established will be Wednesday morning at 9.
Tom Koch, do you wish to divide that question?
I think it would be cleaner, and then people can vote as they wish, and would allow the minority to avoid.
It almost
would
sounds.
allow-
Yeah,
It would allow the minority to vote no on approval of the majority report, and then they could vote yes on the process of publishing it.
It almost sounds to me as though that's proposing to divide part of Rob's motion, but into two subparts. Jeremy, I see your hand. I'll get you in a moment. So that the first part of Rob's motion is to approve the text of the majority reports and
Period.
ask the Secretary of State to
Already done that.
do their magic with them forthwith. The second part of the motion was to delay action on the minority report and the rebuttal to the minority report until Wednesday at 9 a.m. Are you suggesting, Tom, that you want to take action on the delay action on the minority report piece now? And suggesting that you would be voting against delaying action on that? I'm sorry, maybe I'm being
No.
dense.
No, I think the division of Rob's motion is, one, simply to approve both the House and Senate majority reports, period. That'll
Right.
be a 4-3 vote.
Right.
Then the rest of it deals with what the Secretary of State does in terms of publishing. which is to go ahead and do its editorial work, etc., on the two approved majority reports, and hold up distribution. Don't send it to the legislature until we have the meeting on Wednesday to consider the minority report and the rebuttal. And I think we can all agree on that.
Well, you might be wrong about that, but
Yeah.
Jeremy?
I guess I just wanted to point out, I think the reason that we're trying to, or that the motion has, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, that we're packaging the minority report with a rebuttal is that we don't want to have the minority report sent without the rebuttal. That if we can send the majority report, the bulk of the report to the legislature, we don't have to wait. But before the minority report and the rebuttal are sorted, or before those are sent to the legislature, we wanted the chance to review it. Am I understanding that right?
You understand it 100% correctly.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Gene.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to clarify, first of all, I thank you, Tom Koch, for your support of including the minority report. I do very much appreciate your comments. I think the where I'm a little bit stuck is the majority report, as I've understood it, would include the minority report in it as part of, it would be kind of an appended at the end, but part of that report. So I'm unclear on a vote to approve the majority report that doesn't have the minority in it, or minority report in it. I might be simpler. I hope I'm not straying from our motion here, but it seems to me the issue is we're just trying to get these reports voted out of this committee. Obviously, some of us, the majority of us, are in support of the plan that's described, what constitutes the bulk of the majority report. And the rest of us are not in support of it. But we may all be in support of releasing the report that includes the minority report in it. Both pieces are in this report. We're not attesting to our support of one part of it or another. We're just saying we agree to release this report that includes the minority report in it with the rebuttal when it's ready to be added to it. If you follow what I'm saying.
I do, but the reason that I put the rebuttal in there is because I don't feel comfortable with with some of the accusations and tone and manner of the minority report, and I would be opposed to releasing the minority report without the rebuttal attached.
No, and I think there's consensus that they would both be in the report as released. I think the concern is that is there, what is the concern or reluctance about approving the, well, we could take a vote on the initial first part of the motion, up or down, on the majority reports. We could take a separate vote today on inclusion of the minority reports. We could take a third vote on delaying release of anything until Wednesday at 9's action on the rebuttal text. So you vote on the main reports, up or down now. We vote on whether to include minority reports in both cases now. We don't release anything until after Wednesday morning's action on the rebuttal.
Sounds good to me.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that idea?
Tom, I would just say that that works best, and not that this needs to influence anybody, but for the Secretary of State's organizing and getting our work done here, to be able to work on both the majority and minority at once in the report. We could very easily cut it out of there and put it into a separate document if that ends up being the case, but we'd prefer to get to work on all as much as possible, as soon as possible, to get this in a timely fashion over to the legislature.
So then are we ready to vote on both the House and the Senate majority reports?
I think, Mary?
I think the motion still needs a second.
Well, I think Rob's motion was seconded. Was it not? I think we're still bogged down. Rob, your motion was different than what I just suggested. What your motion is to vote now on the two reports, the main versions, and then to delay until Wednesday action on the minority report and the rebuttal.
Yes, that was my motion.
Right.
So if we do what is now being discussed, do I need to withdraw my motion?
Well,
I thought you already did.
I'm not a lawyer or a parliamentarian, so I am way confused.
if you withdraw your motion, I think a motion will be made along the lines that I suggested with three elements. Voting, well, three different motions. Motion one
Right.
is up or down on the main reports with the request of the Secretary of State that they be prepared for publication. Motion number two would be up or down inclusion of the minority report. Without inclusion of a minority report, up or down, and with expecting that the Secretary of State would likewise prepare that for publication. And three, deferring publication of numbers 1 and 2 until after Wednesday's action on the rebuttal. I think that would be the follow-up motion, Rob.
Okay,
So are you withdrawing?
okay, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. Mr. Koch,
Yeah.
would you like to make that first motion?
The first motion, I move to approve both the House and Senate majority reports and ask the Secretary of State to proceed with its editorial work, holding up any publication until after a meeting on Wednesday.
Second.
Seconded by Jeremy. Any discussion? All in favor of, let me do a roll call just for ease. Ed
I
Adrian.
actually have I'm sorry, I have a question. I'm still not clear on what I'm supporting or not supporting with this motion.
Well,
Am I
this is a
supporting the-
motion. This is a motion to, I think, to endorse the content of the majority reports
Okay.
as presented. So all in favor of that motion, Mr. Adrian?
Yeah, yes.
Adrian, yes. Jeremy,
Yes.
Mary. Did
You're
you,
muted,
I didn't,
Mary.
that's a
No.
no, that's a no.
I'm in favor of it going to the Secretary of State. I'm not in favor of the contents.
Okay. Mr. Koch,
Yes,
okay. Mr. Roper,
Yes.
Mr. Little, no. And Ms. Albert,
No.
no, okay. Motion carries 4-3. The next motion, as I understand it, is to move that a minority report be allowed to be inserted into each of the two main reports, with release likewise stayed until after Wednesday morning's action on the draft rebuttal. Mr. Koch, is that your motion?
yes,
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? None. We'll take a vote. Mr. Adrian,
No.
Jean,
Yes.
Mr. Hanson,
Not endorsing the contents, but the inclusion, yes.
okay? Mary Houghton,
Yes.
Tom Little is yes. Rob Roper,
Not endorsing the contents, but endorsing the inclusion.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. I get everybody?
no,
I think
you haven't
You
gotten me
skipped Tom
yet.
Koch.
Koch, you made the motion.
No. And I don't think it's necessary to say I don't endorse the contents, but I endorse
Okay.
the inclusion.
The motion carries. Mr. Koch, would you also like to move to delay action on publication of the foregoing and action on the rebuttal statement from the majority until a reconvene meeting of the board on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock?
Yes,
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any questions or discussion on the motion? The motion is to delay release of the reports and the minority reports and to schedule until after action at a meeting on Wednesday at 9 a.m. on the rebuttal draft. Are you ready for that question? If so, all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? I think the ayes have it.
wow. This whole procedure reminds me of what my rototiller gets to looking like sometimes, with all the weeds tangled up in the tines, and you got to pull the tines off and take them off,
Yeah.
and then put the tines back on.
And we'll, perhaps we can, Eric, if you can keep up with our meeting on Wednesday, perhaps by the end of it, you can put on the screen some draft minutes of the meeting and we can take action on them then and not schedule another meeting beyond that. We'll see if that, we can figure out a way to.
Hopefully I won't have to take the tines off the rototiller and pull all the weeds out.
Okay. Is there any other business to come before this morning's meeting, this afternoon's meeting now? If
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Koch moves to adjourn, Mary seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and we stand in adjournment. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.